Hello.
And Matt Cline. Always,
How we doing?
here to back for another month and another very interesting topic. So that's cool. What's been happening? What's new, Andrew? What's been happening in the Microsoft world?
Windows 11. That's the current news feed, I guess. So that's coming out October 5th or 6th our time. Will be a free upgrade for Windows 10, provided you hit whatever the requirements are, which may or may not change come launch date.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do about the whole TPM thing. I've heard so many people just doing the conspiracy thing with they're doing it so that they can just DRM the hell out of everything, which I don't know. Call me a skeptic, but I don't think that's the reason. I think I like the security of it, but we'll see. There's been a lot of grumpy people. I mean, more so than usual. But then again, the 8 series requirement on the CPU, and then what was the most recent one? If you don't meet the specs, you're not going to get update notifications or automatic updates are going to be
can't even run the tool. So they pulled the tool because it was people getting very angry.
Well, I've also seen that there's a hardware like a USB TPM on a USB or something along those sorts of lines. And it's sort of coming along there. So it'd be interesting to see what happens as far as that's concerned.
I think Robert's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you'll find the reason is what the talk is. They're planning to enable virtualization-based security or automatically out of the box with Windows 11. So you can do application guard, you can do device guard, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So all of that's going to require TPM chips. So I think that's why they're trying to mandate it, so they can turn on virtualization, because the machines are quick enough, they've got enough RAM, and it gives that extra capability on security, so you can eliminate the Mimikatz style attack.
And it's also for secure boot and all that, and secure UEFI as well. So there's a lot of really, really good reasons for it. There's just a lot of people that are naysaying, which is to be expected. Yeah. I mean, anytime Microsoft does anything different, I'm pretty sure that they had a big blow up last time with Windows 10 where the specs were too high, and then
all of that.
I mean, let's not talk about Vista or anything, but but Vista.
But it's certainly over the last 2 years, we've seen the threat emergence of everything that we're doing, especially as people are working from home, and that threat level starts to come up. We've got to respond as a technology across the board with these sorts of things and keeping them more secure. And unfortunately, I think this is a necessary step. And I mean, Microsoft's always been its own worst enemy, in as much as it's been so successful in rolling something out that it can't then go back and change something for fear of the knock-on effects that come along with it. So, unfortunately, it's the change we had to have, I think, that, we can really start to step up that level of security by default.
Yep.
Yeah. Having said that, I had a Windows 11 update that then wanted me to re-enter my BitLocker recovery key, which is, of course, nicely stored in AD, but my AD administrator doesn't work on Mondays. So, yeah.
That's what you want.
Yeah. But the recovery process was really good when we could actually get hold of someone. But, it's interesting to be able to, having those techniques of recovering that BitLocker key quickly and easily for your customers, especially when they're starting to work from home and can start at any time of the day or night. It's something definitely to be thinking about for sure.
Yep. All right, I might as well kick things off. We'll do the usual housekeeping. So we acknowledge the land that we're meeting on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and or attending from other areas of South Australia or Australia.
No in Ghana.
No,
Just kidding.
no. That's, no one needs to know that. I would very much embarrass myself. So I guess we touched on some of the important dates. The Windows 11 stuff, and there's a double up here because I didn't see it when I made the deck. Outlook 2010 won't be able to connect to Exchange Online from the 1st of October. Microsoft's been talking about this since 2017 and threatening to do it since then. They've done it, and good on them. Next up will be legacy authentication, which they keep putting off and putting off and putting off. If you are still using legacy authentication in your environment, I highly recommend having a look at some conditional access policies and starting off with your end users and blocking their ability to use legacy authentication. Legacy authentication is basic authentication for ActiveSync, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, all those wonderful Exchange connections. Any modern ActiveSync client will use the ADL libraries, or actually Modern Auth, not even ADL anymore. They'll use Modern Auth. So your devices, as long as they're up to date, will usually not have a problem. The ones that usually have a problem are your service accounts connecting back through into Exchange. If you're running some crazy scripts and they're not connecting using Modern Auth, you will have problems. That's why the way I've done it in the past is created a conditional access policy, disable legacy auth, and just do it for your core users rather than your actual service accounts. That way your users can be the effective guinea pigs on it. You can obviously, with a conditional access policy, just scope that however you want to do it. Inflict it on the IT department first and then move it out more broadly. But that will be the next one that will be coming. It was supposed to happen
last year.
March this year. I think it may have even been November last year, and then they moved it out. And then because of COVID, they moved it out again. And they were threatening October again this year, but they've moved that out as well. So they haven't said anything again since moving it out last time. So we'll see what happens.
I think it's November 1st.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think they're going to do it. It's too.
And you'd need, I think it's Outlook 2013 Service Pack 1 and above to be able to connect.
Yep, that's right. So I think that's why they're doing this. This is probably stage one for the Modern Auth stuff. The other big one that came out this week, and I'm not talking about it in the deck, so I'll talk about it here, which is Defender for Endpoint Plan 1. This is in public preview right now. It is absolutely free for everyone in public preview while it's in public preview. As soon as it goes GA, it will be rolled up into the M365 E3 license. Now, as I go through, there is a slide which shows the features of, or the components of MDE. The components that Plan 1 incorporates is it gives you visibility into the unified portal, security.microsoft.com. It will give you unified threat hunting, all of that sort of stuff. So you'll be able to see everything in there, but it's basically only covering the next gen protection. So your AV type stuff and the cloud connections back through to that, and gives you that central repository. So if you are using something like a Defender for O365 or MDO, or the old Exchange Online Protection ATP, as it used to be called, you'll get the visibility of both your devices coming into there with Plan 1 and all your MDO stuff in there. So I guess the bonus here is you're starting to see a lot more, a lot richer threat intelligence, and you'll start to see roll-ups of alerts into incidents and all that good stuff into there. And you can set up all your alerting and all the other stuff as well. So it's MDE Lite, Plan 2, which will be the full version of what MDE is, well, as of last week. We'll cover everything that we're talking today. It is covered in obviously full E5 and also the E5 security bundle, and in its own SKU as well. There's no SKU. If you are talking to licensing folk, don't confuse them by asking for Plan 1. They don't have pricing yet. because it's free and there's no skew. So just cut them a break. I mean, I know they deal with licensing, so they're pretty frazzled most of the time anyway. But just give them some time, because Microsoft has literally not given them anything yet because it's free. All right. So Defender for Endpoint. Here's what I'm going to cover off today. The 6 main things is basically I'm going to go through what it is. What are the components within it? So big picture, what is it? The components, what are those each individual components? How do they work? What do each of them do? Where are the integrations? How we go about onboarding devices into MDE, and everything going to plan. There will be a short demo of onboarding and some of the console as well. So I'm not going to race through a lot of this, but I'll probably go through it pretty quickly. I don't have a dedicated Q&A slide at the end, so I will pause at certain points. And if you do want to ask a question, just put your hand up and I'll get to them. Otherwise, the lovely moderation folks, being Andrew and Brett, will tell me to stop. I was going to say answer the questions, but I'm not going to dump them in that.
I appreciate it.
I live to give. So what is Defender for Endpoint? Defender for Endpoint was previously known as Defender ATP, or Defender Advanced Threat Protection. It's the endpoint security platform. And here's the key thing. It's not AV. That's the really big thing. This isn't like Windows Defender on steroids. That's not what this is. It's referred to as an EDR platform, or an endpoint detect and response platform. It goes way, way, way past all that malware, engines, and firewalls to protect. It gives a lot more visibility into threats, alerts, what's happening on your endpoint, how to discover them. And when I say what's going on in your endpoints, when I always think about this, I think about, things like config manager and endpoint manager being in tune. Defender for Endpoint will start, and we'll talk about this in a second. There's a component called Threat and Vulnerability Manager. It starts showing some more of the information around, especially those first 2 pieces in the Essential 8s, which is patch your OS and patch your applications. It will give a lot of visibility into both of those things, and not just from a Microsoft lens. So it'll cover everything off, even down to Linux distros, applications you've got installed. If there is a global CVE number associated with it, it will assign it to there, and you'll be able to see it, and you'll be able to address it in the console. So that's one of the big parts, because it sort of covers off those 2 initial parts of the Essential 8. But it is what's called an extended detect and response service, or an XDR. It's traditionally, it's sort of started out as that EDR. It's gone a bit beyond that, and with all the integration points from all the other Defender pieces, that's where you really start seeing that XDR component. And that's the crux of what Defender for Endpoint is. It's giving you visibility onto threats, vulnerabilities, and components within your endpoint devices, and also your servers. So Defender for Server, which is another component, also integrates those back into this, so that you have a single pane of glass for all of your threat intelligence for servers and endpoints, whether they be Microsoft OSs or Linux or Mac or anything else. This one really surprised me. A few weeks ago, I saw this pop up in my LinkedIn feed. So this is Gartner, and I don't normally throw these in here, but this actually really, really surprised me at where Microsoft sits in terms of EDR and endpoint protection. I was not expecting them to be that far ahead of everyone else. And to be honest, or that close to CrowdStrike, and also to be a bit above them in ability to execute. So it kind of gives you an idea of where the product is in terms of everything else that's sitting around there. I'm not saying it's the absolute best in the world, but it's, it is right up there in terms of its competition with other products. So what are the components within MDE? The components, and I've touched on this one, is your threat and vulnerability management. That's showing basically it's a patch your stuff component. It will show you where your threats are, where your vulnerabilities are within the endpoints, and it focuses on having that global, the universal view of what was the CVE associated with this. And I will break out, and towards the end, I'll show more of the threat and vulnerability management. I have a machine that I onboarded a couple of days ago, and it will show, I've deliberately left it at a lower patch level, so hopefully it hasn't patched overnight or anything like that. It will have, but now that I've said that, and it will show what those vulnerabilities are, what the CVEs are, and how all of that information rolls up into a exposure and risk rating within MDE. Attack surface area reduction is, as it says, we're reducing the surface area that an attacker could hit on our devices. Now, this is specifically for Windows 10, and it does require the AV, or the endpoint security, to be Windows Defender. So MDE will work with, if you've got a traditional McAfee, Symantec, Trend on your desktops, and you want to keep that there. It will work in that situation. There are some components that you won't be able to use though, and one of those is attack surface area reduction. These are policies that are implemented through either Intune, through Config Manager, or through group policy, where we're starting to reduce the attack area that people can have within those Windows 10 devices. So this is stuff like device control, turning off Bluetooth, blocking USB, external USB drives, all the way through to application whitelisting, network monitoring, all those other bits and pieces that would reduce the exposure of that device to an attack. Next gen protection is the actual AV component. This is allowing files to be uploaded into Microsoft Cloud, into their Microsoft Security Intelligence graph for checking and for blocking and for leveraging all of that onto your endpoints as well. Your endpoint detect and response, which is your ability to actually interact with those devices as a SOC analyst, to be able to do a whole heap of stuff into them, including opening remote sessions to them, to be able to isolate them from the network, to be able to actually respond to threats, and also to be able to do things like your advanced hunting, to see the alerts, to see the incidents. Now, when I'm talking about alerts and incidents, these aren't your typical ITIL terms. So an incident in this nomenclature is a roll up of multiple alerts. So when you start seeing a alert, that's a singular, and an incident is a group of alerts. And you start to see, and I'll be able to show in the console what an incident looks like, and you'll be able to see a very small version of what you can kind of build out in terms of the visualization for what an incident looks like and how something traverses through an environment. Auto investigation and remediation. I'm not going to go by the Microsoft's words, but basically it's AI and machine learning that lets you remediate those endpoints, or not lets you, it automatically remediates things on your endpoints. So that might be deleting a piece of malware. It could be reverting a registry key. It could be doing any of those things. Now, there's multiple different levels. You don't have to go what's called fully automated. I'll show this a little bit later. There's some granular controls. And so you can even control that more granularly down to, well, I'm cool with full automatic remediation on my knowledge worker devices. It can go its hardest. But my servers, I want there to be a human being that approves that when a alert has come up and that's going to impact, say, the system files or something in program files. An administrator needs to come in and approve that, and they can actually approve it and get the machine to perform the change in the background. It just needs an approval. So I'll go through that as well. And threat experts is basically a Microsoft threat expert, an actual human being that you can call on. It's like the bat phone. You can ping them about, like, if you're seeing something weird, you can reach out to a threat expert. There are some costings involved in that. You do have to apply for it as well. And if it's a prod tenancy, it just gets applied. It just gets approved. It's kind of to stop people from using demo tenancies and, you know, applying for threat expert and just turning it on and them having to worry about it. So let's break down what each of those are. And I have covered them a bit. I'll go into them a little bit more. Threat and vulnerability management is the built-in capability that uses a risk-based approach to the discovery, prioritization, and remediation of endpoint vulnerabilities and misconfiguration. So it's patching across more than just your OS. And when I say OS, I'm not just talking about Windows. Like I said, we're talking about Linux, we're talking about Mac, we're talking about everything else. There are CVEs associated with the vulnerability so that you can start seeing them, understanding them. As you look at alerts as well, all the MITRE attack ratings are in there. It also gives you a risk score of devices. And within Intune, you can start setting compliance policies based on the risk score of devices. So you can by extension, you can start building out your conditional access policies for obviously, if it's not meeting a compliance level, then it's not going to be hitting the requirements to be classified as healthy, which means that an unhealthy device you can block from connecting through into your tenancy or through to certain applications with conditional access policies. Attack surface area reduction, as I said, ensures the configuration settings are properly set and exploit mitigation techniques are applied. It includes network protection, web protection, regulates access to malicious IP addresses, domains, URLs. It's policy-based security, and as I said before, it requires Defender AV to be the active AV solution. That's just a hard requirement. It's one of those better together things. You've just got to have that as the active AV. Microsoft's got a migration path sitting on the Microsoft Docs page on how to transition from a third party into Windows Defender once you're going down the path of MDE as well. It's not overly complicated and is basically the same way, no matter, well, not basically, it is the same process, no matter whether you're coming from a McAfee or you're coming from a Symantec or wherever you're coming from. Next gen protection. So cloud delivered protection, it offers block at first sight. So if it's seen the alert before, it will just flat block it. And then also potentially unwanted application protections as well. So PUAs and your cloud delivered protection all start ramping up that Windows Defender capability. Again, obviously, this is another one of those better together things where it needs the Windows Defender on there for obvious reasons. But it allows for more blocking and more analysis just outside of the normal heuristics and signature-based everything's of a traditional AV. Endpoint detect and response. They're put in place to detect, investigate, and respond to advanced threats that may have made it past the first two security pillars. Advanced hunting provides a query-based threat hunting. So if you've ever seen anything with SQL, Microsoft's got a new query language. It's called KQL or Cusco query language. See, I keep saying Cusco, and I keep thinking of the Emperor's New Groove. So if I start breaking out into Emperor's New Groovisms, just bear with me. And so that allows you to really find a whole heap of stuff, and it's super quick as well. You can go through a ton of data and really find the stuff that you need to as you're traversing through there. KQL is being used more and more. It's the primary querying language that is being used in Sentinel and obviously within everything else security within Microsoft. It has a very similar syntax to SQL. So if you've done anything with SQL, you'll get KQL very quickly. So MDE can be set to what's called block mode, so EDR block mode. So when you do have another AV as your primary AV on your endpoints, it will give you all of these EDR functionalities. You just need to set it into what's called block mode. It's an odd name for it, but that's just what they've gone with. AIR, If you've done anything with MDO or Defender for O365, or as I said, EOP, ATP, you kind of use the concept of AIR or ZAP. It works by using ML and AI to automate remediation of threats. And the automation level can be configured on device groups. I'll go into device groups more as we go through, and I'll show what a device group looks like within the demo. Device groups are basically, well, they're exactly what they sound like. They're groups of devices. And within those groups of devices, you get to set these automation levels within there. Threat experts, as I said, I'm not going to go over this again, gives you the ability to consult an MS threat expert for additional assistance if you're looking at something that looks real funky and you're not sure what's going on. So the integration pieces, the out-of-the-box big ones, obviously, Intune and Endpoint Manager. It does give some additional components within there. Stuff like your security people can send a notification through into Intune when they see something in the threat and vulnerability management to say, hey, this needs to be patched. It doesn't go and do the patching for you. Even if you had the patch available as a package in your config manager or Intune, what it does is it just lets the config, the endpoint person know, and then they can go and do it. Because unless you kind of a smaller IT shop, you got dedicated security people and you got dedicated endpoint management people. They're very different beasts. So you kind of don't want the security guy doing the patching some of the time. So unless you're in one of those situations where you are the person doing security and patching and AD and everything else, but then it sort of loses some of the appeal because you can see it, go into Intune and just do it. ServiceNow integration. So as alerts pop up, you can have it automatically generate tickets within ServiceNow. SIEM integration. Obviously, it'll work brilliantly with Sentinel for obvious reasons, but there's also APIs and the ability to take the MDE data and push that out through a streaming API to your SIEM of choice as well. There's a whole heap of other integrations as well. There's within the portal, there's like a list of applications and plugins and everything else that you can get back into Security Center. And in the broader sense, so when I start talking about the Defender suite, that is that Microsoft Defender 365, which makes up that suite of products. So how do you actually get endpoints in there? Well, when you look at this, it's kind of your typical deployment rings. You're looking at your proof of concept. You want to do your discovery, your refinement of your policies. You want to make sure everything's working. That's less than 50 endpoints. Usually I'm leaning towards about 10 to begin with. After you get past truly the test phase, where you're literally just running it on a couple of test machines to make sure that, you've run the onboarding stuff and it doesn't crash and burn and, there's nothing on fire anywhere. But then when you move it out into that prod part where it's actual users, and again, you're probably using the IT department at this point, starting to see what data you're getting through from this area. How quickly you're getting data through as well is another part. What to expect as you're moving into, a more production level component. And then you move out to pilot, which is usually around that 50 to 100, and then your full deployment is 100 plus endpoints. Which segues quite nicely into your deployment methods. So how are you getting this onto your machines? So for Windows, there is local scripts. Please, I'll go into the local script in a minute, but you've got to be, there's a couple of things. You've got to be a little bit careful with that one. You can use it. You can deploy it as a standard script. There's just something in there that's got a bit of a bite to it on large scale deployments. You can use GPOs, you can use an MDM, you can use Microsoft Endpoint Manager, SCCM, or ECM as it is now, VDI, persistent VDIs, so things like Cloud PC and stuff like that. So like Windows 365, not a problem. Just treat them as a normal endpoint because they're not getting torn down and built back up. If you're using non-persistent VDI, so as in when a user logs out, it actually deletes the VDM, the VDI instance and that actual VM. That starts to get a little bit more tricky, and you have to do some pre-deployment scripting and some other bits and pieces. Microsoft's got a really, really long post in the docs articles about how to do it, and it's really detailed. It gives you everything that you need to do in there. And if you speak VDI and you've been doing it for a while, you'll understand all of the stuff that needs to be done in there. It does start to get a little bit more tricky, and just be aware there is about a 5 to 10 minute window where there is the potential where a VDI session could be unprotected. So Microsoft does call that out in there, and it's just because of the way that VDI and non-persistent endpoints work. So Azure Defender integration, so it integrates back into with servers, and servers talking back into Security Center within Azure. Mac is a local script, then you can either use MEM or MDM. Linux, local script again, or Puppet or Ansible, or anything else that you can push that local script out with. iOS and Android, those are app-based, so you can push the apps out through a MDM, or the users can just download them. Client compatibility. The matrix that I've got on the right-hand side of this slide may be a bit off. I haven't looked at it in a little while, and because these things keep changing, some of those things may have improved or not improved. So if that is a bit off, use it as a reference point, and then go, your mileage may vary type thing. So from a Windows point of view, it supports SP1, Windows 7 SP1, all the way through to 11, which is actually just Windows 10 hiding with a 1 instead of 0. Server 2008 R2 all the way through to 2019. I would be very surprised if 2022 is not supported, although it's only just gone GA. Linux, CentOS 7.2, Red Hat 7.2, Ubuntu LTS 16 plus, Debian 9, Oracle Linux 7.2, and SLES 12. And this is just a general idea of what you're going to get along the way. So these will change. So especially the Linux and Mac ones, I think, are getting the most attention. These are probably, I don't know if they're ever going to get down to attack surface area reduction. I'd say that they're aiming for that though. But, you're starting to see some pretty decent compatibility and some feature across a lot of platforms then. All right. Let's see how this goes. Where's the quick send button? All right. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is Contoso. They've been nice enough to lend me their tenancy. And this is the Windows Defender page. This is the new unified portal. You'll start to see endpoints, MDO. It's not available in this tenant, but from what I've heard in the last few weeks, Defender for Identity has been rolled into here, which just leaves MCAS out in the cold, which they're planning on bringing through. So I'll just go through some of the configuration items here. Some of the stuff that I was talking about before. When you look at these are your global settings. So automated investigation, it just turns the feature on. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen automatically. You've still got to set it up. And that's where it comes down here into auto remediation and your device groups, which we'll go through in a second. Live response. It allows you to get that remote command line into machines to be able to do stuff, to collect information, to upload files to it if you need to run scripts. And it does break this out between endpoints and into client devices and servers. So if you're cool with that being there for Windows 10 and your client machines, but you're not with servers, you have the ability to turn this off. Unsigned scripts, if you want to run unsigned scripts through the command shell, you can do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. So if you're in the process of starting to sign all your SOC scripts and all your investigation scripts and everything else, but you just need a little bit more time, you can turn this one on and it will start running unsigned scripts in live response. EDR block mode. So this is what I was talking about before. It just needs to be turned on here and it magically turns it on. You do need the cloud capabilities turned on through Defender, and you also need to have Defender set into passive mode. So if you have another AV solution and you have completely disabled Defender on your Windows endpoints, EDR, MDE won't work at all. So it's something to be aware of. It just needs to be in passive mode. So it won't consume many resources. It will consume some, obviously, because you're doing a lot of the EDR components within there. But it needs to be in passive mode because that is effectively the agent or sensor for MDE. Custom network indicators. So this is part of the block IP addresses for domains, URLs in your custom indicators list. So you can start blocking those things and you'll start to see things like this popping through, where you're starting to see that Windows versions start to become more important. I think the lowest version of Windows that gets the full treatment is 1803. 1709 gets you about 80% of the way there. And then 1803 kicks it in so that that's probably your lowest that you want to be. Realistically, you're out of the servicing model at that point. I believe that's, I'm sure that Brett can tell me that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that 1803 is out of support now anyway. It's 18 months, isn't it, Brett? Just say yes. Good talk.
Sort of find the mute button. Yes, I believe.
Right, there we go. Tamper protection. So within your, and here we go. Here's one I prepared earlier. So within here, and this is a here we go. Right, settings. This is not joined to a domain. This is literally just a machine that I have running in Azure. It's in a work group. It's 21H1. It was just the Azure gallery image for this one. This is actually the one I'm going to be demoing the onboarding onto. So in here, what you'll see is all of these things, and we may not be able to see because it does take a little time for policies to push through. But all of these things, even on BYOD devices or non-domain joined devices or non-controlled via Intune devices, can have tamper protection turned on. So that will actually stop your users, even on devices that aren't domain joined or Intune joined or SCCM joined or any other policy mechanism deployment for this, to be able to stop users from changing that. Show user details. If for some privacy reason you need to obscure which user is associated with a device, you can do that here. Skype Business, so one-click communication. There is a function called device isolation. And strangely enough, it completely isolates the device from the network, with two exceptions. It allows Outlook to keep working and Teams to keep working. And in this instance, Skype for Business, same but different for Teams. So you can still chat to the end user to say, hey, you've run some pretty messed up stuff on there, and I've had to completely block your machine from there. Go make a cup of coffee or something, because I'm going to have to fix this. But it does also allow that one-click communication with users. So as you start looking at devices, you'll start seeing that you can actually communicate with users through there. Integration with MDI. As you can see, I haven't finished off my MDI integration, but it just basically sends telemetry through bidirectionally through to MDI. Same for MCAS. And again, I haven't done anything with MCAS in this tenancy. Secure score, and you start to see, this is probably the most important one, is the Intune connectivity. Device discovery. So it allows onboarded device to discover unmanaged devices on your network to assess their vulnerabilities as well. This has just come out of preview. It's now GA. It's like it says, it allows you to see the vulnerability of devices that aren't onboarded there. And you can start seeing what this means and what it does as well. So it does say preview features. It's not in preview anymore. It's only just gone GA though. So just be aware of that. Now, I'm going to talk about the auto remediation, but first I'm going to talk about device groups. So here's one I prepared earlier. So when you look at this, I've just given it a name. And as you can see for this device group, we get to pick what level of remediation we want to be able to use. So full, semi requires approval for core folders. Core folders are program files and your OS files, your OS folders. Non-temp folders. So that starts covering the user hive. So with this, what will happen is you will get the pending status for work to be done on a machine. If you hit approve, MDE will go and do the recommended thing, or you can still go in there and manually do it if you want to. But it does allow you to still use some of that automation, but it still needs the human to go in and assess it and approve the change that's going to be done. Require approval for all folders. So if there's something that needs to be deleted, obviously, it's going to need approval for any folder that's impacted there. So this is how you build out device groups. So device groups are based on either the name of the machine. We can go start with ends with equals or contains, and then how you're defining your machine. So if you know that all of your desktops start with desktop, for example, you can put that in there and you'll get all of your desktops. You can define this by domain. So if you want to have a segregation of domains within there, you can do that. And tags, and this is the one I've set up here, and I'll show it in a minute because I haven't done it yet. But tags are, well, you tag a endpoint, and I'll show this now. So let's go out of there. Let's go to device inventory. Okay, there it is. So when we go to our device, and this is not the Azure machine I was showing before. This is a different machine. It did patch, see, but we can see here that it's got a low exposure level. This used to be high, but the thing here is, right, so I can add a tag, and we'll see here, there, and those tags will start showing up. So we know that that's there, right? So that will help us build out those device groups. You can automate tagging machines with either Logic Apps in Azure or Power Automate, or you can use the registry. Now, if you use the registry and you use GPO, SCCM, and Intune for that, you can't edit them anywhere else but in the registry. Once they're in the registry, that's it. They're just there. You can't do anything but manage those tags within the registry. It blocks it even from you adding or removing tags within within the console even. So you can see here, got my tag. Now, let's see if we go back into device groups. Start previewing here. Oh, it hasn't done it yet. See, this is what happens. Now, the other good thing about device groups is it's where you set your RBAC rules. So you can RBAC the hell out of MDE and Defender for 365. It doesn't flow through into things like PIM, privileged identity management, back through. So you can't do that, but you can use the preview function of PAG, which is preview access groups, to elevate into these. So what you can do with your RBAC rules is you can say your entry-level SOC guys, you want them to have read access into here so that they can see, you know, threat and vulnerability management. and then you got level 2 SOC guys, and you might have a level 3 group, and each of them has different permissions into there. So as you can see, here's your permissions that can be assigned. This is actually the default one, and then you can assign users within here to be able to say, you know, but anyway, so that's how you do it. You can set the permission as needed, and they're not super granular, no, but you can actually control what each group has access to. And if you did have, say, your desktop guys, you could just have a device group for just desktops, and you could assign them for particular permissions to be able to see them, but you don't want them to be able to see, for example, the servers. You want a different group of people to be able to do that. Or you want a group of people to be able to only have basic live response. It allows you to be fairly granular in your controls within the actual product of who can do what, and more importantly, who can see what. So back to devices. So this is the TVM component, and we can start to see here was an alert that was on there. And when you look at alerts, you start seeing a lot of information here. What happened? We can see that Explorer was run, that command line was run, which ran this command line. As you can see, this is the actual test file. And then PowerShell was launched. You can see all of that information and then what each one has done. So you start seeing that you're building out all of this really interesting information on what happened with your devices. So it started with something running at the command line, and then it spawned a whole heap of processes, and each one of those processes ran all of these different things. And you start to see what that endpoint was doing. Now you can see the device that was in there, the tag for it, and you can see who was logged in at the time. From here, you can break out into opening the device page. You can set the device value. So at the moment, you can set that to high, medium, and low value. This is high, medium, and low. The value of devices is not directly linked to tags. So you can have a device value, and tags also, you can have more than one tag as well. So you can set your device values here. And you can, when you set your device values, you can start setting some alerting as well. And you can run an AV scan on there. You can collect an investigation package. An investigation package includes all the processes that were running, everything that was going on with the registry, a full dump of everything on that machine. It does take a little while to generate, but yeah, you can start seeing those things. So I think, hopefully, I did run one before. There we go. Let's see how good my internet is. All right, that can just download in the background. You can start, I'll show you what that looks like. And then opening for the users, you can start seeing what that user was doing. Here we go. So here's what it shows you. So what the auto run was. So you can start to see what the registry information was. So you can start having a look to see if anything injected any information to auto run, so that you're starting to look for things where an attacker may be trying to establish a long-term hold on this machine. You can start seeing the current control sets. So there's a lot of all of the installed programs on there, what the network connection was doing, what the DNS cache was. There's a lot of really good information in here for you to be able to actually see what was going on. Scheduled tasks. Scheduled tasks is one of the ways that an attacker can actually start to take and keep hold of a machine. So all of the scheduled tasks that are being run here. I won't go through all of them, but you get the general idea. And at the root, there's a forensics collection summary. So all the stuff that was done. the commands that were run, so that you've got the forensics of what was done within there as well. Right. Okay, so if we have a look at, so that's a very quick overview of that TVM component as well. And if we have a look on here, the other bit that it does is gives you a timeline of when things happened. There's some security recommendations. Now, as I said, I haven't had this onboarded for a long time, but it will start as you have it going longer. There'll be like a little green icon down around this sort of area that will start showing you that this recommendation will not have an end user impact. So right now, it bases it on what the patterns that it sees of usage on that machine. So you can start seeing what the security recommendations are for this machine. A lot of these, obviously, will be looking at application guard, those attack surface area reductions. There's a whole heap of things in here. One thing to be aware of, and it is saying it in here, block processes created through PS exec and WMI. Now, so here we go. This is the reason why I brought it up. There's a attack surface area reduction rule that blocks PS exec and WMI commands. Now, that stops them from running as system. Now, if you've got an SCCM client on there, that runs everything as system. If you put this on, it will break SCCM. So just something to be aware of. And Microsoft, Microsoft actually calls it out there. So where was it? There. So yeah. So basically, that's where it's telling you don't do this if you're using SCCM clients still. It gives you a full software inventory, including versions. Now, these little icons here, your threats, breach insight. So there's no known breaches associated with that software, and threat insights. So if that turns green, it will give you a list of any breaches that are known. And I'm talking about public breaches, not breaches into your environment. If there's been a publicly known breach to do with any of these versions of the software, it will show you. And also if there's any known public exploits of those as well. And then allows you to go back through and see where you get to see all your missing KB. So you can see I haven't patched everything apparently, except for this one. And you can see there, what's the CVE? You start seeing these flyouts starting to give you a lot more information in terms of them. Now, anything that has an icon next to the name, you start hovering over it and you start seeing some more information about that particular topic. So while there's no official CVE on this one, it's been assigned one by Threat and Vulnerability Manager. So, and then the score on the CVSS, discovered vulnerabilities, what it was, and what the missing KB is, and what you need to do around that. It starts giving you a lot more insight into those endpoints. The TVM dashboard starts giving you an exposure disk, and as you start building these out, you start seeing more and more stuff. And this works very similar to if you used a secure score or identity score or compliance score or anything in M365 that has the word score in it. This is probably a very similar dashboard to everything. And you also have those security recommendations on how you can up your score. So what I am going to do is very quickly, what I've done here is, so down here in onboarding, it's really, really easy to do this. You pick the operating system that you want to onboard. We've got Windows 10. You pick how you want to do it, group policy, and it gives you a download pack. It gives you an onboarding package. You take that, you read the instructions, you do it. It's really, really simple. Each one of config manager, depending on which version you're running, MDM, you're starting to see, and there's the non-persistence. So this gives you the link back through to there, and also what the onboarding package looks like. Win7, as you can see here, you need to install the Microsoft monitoring agent, and then there's some additional configuration that needs to be done. So that's how you do that. So what I've done here for this device is I have gone for Windows 10. I have grabbed the local script and I have dropped that on here now. That actually comes down as a zip file and it just contains this one file. And if we have a look at this file, there's one thing that's worth just drawing to everyone's attention. This line here, what it does is for this is for your POC machines, this is for your proof of concept. It sets a latency of demo onto your machines. What it means is that the machine will report into MDE every 30 seconds rather than every 5 minutes. Now, there is an average of 5 megabytes per device per day for uploads for MDE on average. This puts it into report quickly mode, basically. So you're going to see everything in the portal a lot quicker, which is great for POCs and everything else. But if you've got a lot of devices or old firewalls or anything like that, then you're going to start seeing some problems in terms of connections back through to there. So here's a command line. Spell. I think I may need to just go on mute for 2 seconds because I've got someone banging on my door while this is happening. So as this runs, I'm just going to say yes, and I'm going to go on mute for a second. And cool. Okay, so finish that off. Everything's running. It had admin privileges. It ran. Now, what we can do to test that is we can then take this and drop that into there. Now, this will be the alert that we saw before, and it will close that. That's supposed to happen. So now it does take a little while to come back through here. So we're probably not going to see that device coming through just yet. But that's all there is to it in terms of onboarding a device. And as I said, that's the easy way with the script. Just be aware of that demo mode. And it's fine to run on your POC machines, but if you're starting to see saturation in terms of your connections, just check for that registry key for demo on the latency. And I think, oh, sorry, I did not go through this. So incidents and alerts. So I'll quickly show this. Right. You start seeing these incidents and it ties them back through into, what is it? It's in terms of the MITRE attack, we're looking at recon. So what's been happening, you know, a lot more information, what the alerts are, what devices were involved with it, what users were involved with it. If you've got MDO running, it will tell you if there was any mailboxes involved. So there's a lot more information there. And the alert that we saw before, which was that test one, and this brings us back in through to there. So you start seeing, as I said, there's not a lot in here. You'll start, so hopefully yours looks just as good as this, but you can see activity from an infrequent country. So that's because I'm effectively, as I said, this is running in Azure. So this is coming out of the Singapore data center. And as I click on that, it's breaking me out into MCAS to be able to show me that alert. So it's pulling it up because I'm a global admin. It was the first time in 39 days and you start seeing all of this information in here. So obviously this is breaking out into MDO, but it's giving you alerts across all of those different platforms as well. Right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. hopefully everyone's still awake. Any questions?
There's none in the chat so far, but if anyone's got any questions.
I feel like I've just talked at you for about.
No, it's very. I think it's really good to be able to give people the exposure of what it actually looks like and everything that is in there. I know a lot of government agencies are taking the step forward into Essential 8 and looking down that sort of path, setting up their own NOC, for want of a better word, to sort of look at these threats as they're coming through. And this sets that up perfectly for being able to not only mitigate some of those, but then monitor what's going on and then respond to them straight away as well. So we've seen some real maturity from Microsoft in this area, as you show with that Gartner report. They just keep adding and adding and adding to their capabilities in this area, which is cool. But how do you? There's a lot of information delivered, so thanks.
How do you process it all?
How do you process it all?
Oh, hang on. That's really remiss of me. Sorry, I actually have. I will. Sorry, let me present this again. So here's one I prepared earlier. Let me just show this in here, and I'm going to do it on my whole screen. And I'll go into this mode. And I'm sorry, this is going to. I've gotten a bit. Okay. Look. You know what? You're just going to have to deal with it this way because it's just the way it is. I forgot that I had this slide. So Microsoft runs these things called Ninja Training. And I actually dropped this in chat so that you're not reliant on anything else. So Ninja Training, there's Ninja Training, which is detailed in-depth training that takes you actually through beginner, intermediate, and advanced for the entire M365 Defender suite. So there's MDE, MDI, MDO, Defender for servers, and Sentinel. And they're each individual ones, and they're updated every quarter. I think they go through and actually update all the training. So it's really, really cool. The second one is a book that I highly recommend. I've read it a couple of times. Really, really, really good book. And it covers off all of the Defender 365 stuff. It is probably a little bit slanted towards the MS500 exam, and it would be a great resource for that, but it's not specifically a certification book. And the other one is MS Learn. So there's actually a really good Learn pathway through for MDE as well. So sorry, I completely forgot about that, but now I'm sharing my screen and I've got the last slide. And that's
really good resources there for sure.
Yeah. It is a lot, and I've barely scratched the surface. So I didn't even go into any of the hunting or anything like that. I didn't go into the MDE, the Intune components on how to do attack surface area reduction. There is and excuse my language, but there is a metric shit ton left to do, and I just can't cover it in 45 minutes. And I was very conscious of the fact that I was actually pushing into information overload on even the stuff that I was talking about in the demo, because it is just scratching the surface. So, and there you go, short and sweet educational videos on MDE. There's also some great stuff on YouTube as well. So some great YouTubers. There is a podcast called Microsoft Security Insights, which is really, really good if you're kind of getting into that Microsoft security side as well. It doesn't just touch on MDE, covers all of the security stuff within the Microsoft area. So that's it. And that knock on the window was my wife telling me that I need to go and pick up my son. So I need to run away, and I hate to do it. So if there's any questions,
post them here, and then we'll get back to you. We'll
correct.
get Matt to get back to you.
If you chuck them in chat, I will do my best to respond to them when I get back in a bit. And I hate to love you and leave you.
No, thanks, Matt. That was really useful, man. Thank you very much. And yeah, we'll talk to you next month. As always, this is going to be recorded. This has been recorded, and we're going to throw it up on our YouTube channel. So if there was something that you sort of missed, or you want to go back over or show somebody else, yeah, that'll be available very, very soon. We'll let you know what's coming up next month. If there's any suggestions that topics that people want to hear about or have covered, please let us know. We're always trying to find the best content that we can for our members. So yeah, please feel free to let us know if there's a particular topic that you'd like to see covered in depth, or like this one, an overview of what their product is and how to be able to use it. So thanks again, Matt. Thank you, Andrew.
No problems. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone, for attending. We'll
Thank
see you
you
next
all.
month.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.